In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the TCP Building Design Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread, and all town facilities are currently closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, accessed through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the TCP Building Design Committee is convening via Zoom web conference, which has been posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We will turn now to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective, clear conduct of our business. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes or so for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. I think that will do it. With that, we will turn to the agenda. First order of business is public comment from the public. Do we have any public comment from the public?
I would like to. Yeah,
Mr. Allison, go ahead.
Thank you. Matthew Allison, 188 Blatt Hill. I'm also chairman of planning board, and in the committee reports for this group, it came up that there are no minutes for this group since I thought 10/23/19 was the first meeting, but apparently there was a meeting on 10/16/19. And I did go back and look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the meetings. At your 10/23 meeting, the 10/16 meeting minutes were approved. At your 11/13/19 meeting, your 10/23 minutes were approved with revisions. And on 12/18, your 11/13 minutes were approved. So there's 3 sets of minutes that your group actually reviewed and approved that aren't on the website. I was not able to find any record whatsoever aside from the approval of the minutes for the 10/16 meeting. I guess I watched your most recent meeting where you also discussed this, and I don't think it's appropriate that whoever was responsible for taking the minutes be let off the hook. It's not that difficult. As I spent a couple hours today reviewing 10 of your meetings, realized that there are 3 of them that have been written and approved by the group. But that's that. I also was watching a finance committee meeting, most recent, I believe, where one of your members, Mr. Passios, had made a statement about non-municipal uses, I believe it was. I think specifically the Grange was mentioned. So I'm also the chairman of the Agricultural Commission. The Agricultural Commission have numerous times brought this group up. We have high hopes of getting at least one warrant article for town meeting to accept having a public market. A public market that TCP would be the perfect spot for a public brick and mortar all year round public market. And I guess I wanted to, it was also commented in the finance committee meeting that there was a process to be considered in the planning for the TCP. And I guess this is twofold. I want to ask what that process is, and I want to ask specifically about a non-municipal use such as the Grange, which is a nonprofit, very similar to the Lions Club. So I think that covers what I have to say. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Mr. Ellison. Your comments are very well. I'm going to just speak real quick out of turn here. Your comments are noted. I've said now twice that, and I want to say it again, out of respect for you, Mr. Ellison, and all those watching the town at large, that I apologize for the minutes, and we're going to, and I appreciate your comments, but we're going to collectively talk about that at our, probably on our next agenda item. So I want to acknowledge that. And relative to your comment about the Ag Commission, I really appreciate that, that feedback. I'm not going to hastily answer that question right now, but I do want you to know that that it's noted, and we'll certainly be back in touch. I want to make sure we, like we've tried to say all along, we're trying to be as transparent in this process as possible. So I do appreciate you coming and giving us that, and we want to be as inclusive as possible. I mean, that's what we're here for. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments from the public? Okay, I'll take public comments from the board. Go ahead, Mr. Blatt.
Mr. Chair, may I make the suggestion that we have Mr. Allison and his group do the same that we've asked others, and that is that we're at the, we're basically here for the Board of Selectmen first, and that any kind of proposal or anything they would like to be considered to draft something to the Board of Selectmen in that to give us better direction.
Yeah, that might be appropriate, but I don't want to cram this into public comment. Let's take this up under new business and let's talk about thoughtfully at the end. I want to give this the time that it's due. So let's all talk about this at the end under new business.
All right.
I think it would be a more appropriate time so we have a little bit more, I think it fits better in the agenda there.
Okay.
Anybody else? Michael, Mr. Jeffries.
Yes, hi, good evening. So there's 2 things I wanted to follow up on, and I think that this is probably the appropriate time to mention them since I don't see where they would otherwise fit in the agenda. So last week there was a question that went to the select board about the charge for this committee and if it and as it relates to community space. So we had, in our last meeting, we did discuss this, and the general consensus from the board was that the charge of the committee is based on the town meeting article that was approved, which I know the board has reviewed. And just to restate that, that article read that was approved to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the design and engineering to consolidate town offices, school uses, and community space at the building and land known as the TC Passios, located at 1079 Massachusetts Avenue, et cetera, and any I'll keep reading it. Shown on Assessor's Map 060 Lot 055, and any and all incidental and related costs, including but not limited to site evaluation, engineering, and final design services, or take any other action relative thereto. With that understanding, there was a question about the Boys and Girls Club and if that would be considered a community use that this committee could otherwise explore without needing to come back to the Board of Selectmen for. And the board, the consensus was that this committee can absolutely consider community spaces without first needing to re-engage the board. So that was one thing. And the second thing was that the board also wanted me to relay back to the committee that the need to publish minutes in a timely and orderly, in a timely manner is required by law, and that it is an expectation of this committee to publish all previous minutes as expediently as possible and to publish all minutes going forward within a reasonable amount of time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see anybody else. All right, we will turn to approval, review and approve minutes. So this is a twofold discussion. So Tanner was kind enough to forward us a draft of the minutes from last week. I don't know, I confess I have not had a chance to review them. Do we want to take 5 or so minutes and just all review them here?
I've reviewed them. I'm ready to vote on them if
Okay.
the chair so determines we can.
What can we take 2 or 3 minutes at least, and just so I can at least skim them? Let's do that. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Is Tanner's notes, are they based on a draft that we sent, or is a separate document?
Basically what I took was your summary and incorporated it into, I believe it was agenda item 3, which was your update. So the notes you forwarded, I made some minor adjustments.
Great.
I didn't really remove anything. I just added a little more detail, primarily around the discussion that unfolded relative to the Boys and Girls Club. But that portion of the minutes is basically taken directly from your notes, and thank you for forwarding those along. They were very helpful. The only thing I'd ask is if you could send it in Word or Pages format. It'll make it a little easier for me to cut and paste. So.
Sure.
Just give me a few
Michael,
minutes.
you're muted.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity to review the minutes, and I first, my last name is misspelled throughout, so I would want that correction before they get published. I don't believe that the characterization of the discussion in D and E, D is accurate. The rest of it I don't have an issue with.
Specifically, which item is D?
So D is the section that talks about the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
I'll read it. Tom Lamb mentioned the Boys and Girls Club of Lunenburg expressed interest to locate the services to the TCP building. David Blatt offered to reach out to the Boys and Girls Club to discuss their plans and request a letter detailing their needs. Greg Roy noted if this issue was beyond the charge or mission of the TCP building committee. Other members agreed and suggested separate conversations to take place. DAI to include BGCL as a design option during preliminary planning. I don't know what that sentence means. Michael Ray Jeffries cautioned the committee to remain focused on the town office needs rather than being too focused on the Boys and Girls Club. Dave Passio opined that the Boys and Girls Club is community use and therefore should be included in the planning. I don't think that that's a recap of how I recall that conversation happening. I think that David Blatt expressed an interest in additional program space or the need to relocate. I thought that was a dual part. I don't recall, Greg Roy, that you saying that that was beyond the charge or mission of the TCP building committee. I think that there was a question there. I don't believe that I said that the committee needs to focus on town offices I don't think that that's a correct characterization of that portion of the discussion. I would just ask that we rework that.
Okay. Before we decide how to do that, anybody else have any comments?
Mr. Chair, based on the previous comments, I move that we table these minutes till next meeting.
Okay, but let's be responsive here. Do we want to give Tanner our thoughts on some possible corrections to the I mean, correcting a spelling name is one thing, but do we want to give some
Well, and if I may, Mr. Chair, I guess I would just ask, do you feel like your comments were reflective, accurate?
I would.
Does Mr.
Yeah.
Blatt feel that way? Does Mr.
Okay, yeah, each person give their own, that's yeah, that's fair.
Deciding
I think,
themselves. It shouldn't be up to Mr. Jeffries to decide for everybody else on the committee.
yeah, that's fine. That's a good way to do it. So for me, I think a better characterization of what I said was that you might just say, Greg Roy noted the issue was perhaps beyond the charge of the committee. I think I was trying to convey that I wanted to make sure we were in line. And I think that was one of the reasons why Mr. Jeffries Mr. Jeffries was kind enough to bring that back to the select board. So maybe just add the word perhaps or something in there that I was sort of questioning whether it was. I wasn't trying to make a definitive statement. If anybody else wants to.
I would look at it as it was my comments. I think were after Mr. Roy's comments. Basically, is when it was mentioned that this might be perhaps beyond the scope. I had made the suggestion to ask the Boys and Girls Club to formalize a letter to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so I guess, how is that substantially different than David Blatt offered to reach out to the Boys and Girls Club to discuss their plans and request a letter detailing their needs?
Just I would add to ask that they request composing a letter to the Board of Selectmen detailing their needs.
Okay. So I'll add to the Board of Selectmen.
I'm fine with that. Thank you, Tanner.
Which I know this isn't really a talking point at this stage in the game, but based on Mr. Allison's public comment requesting some clarification on the process, knowing that the Board of Selectmen at their last meeting, according to Michael Ray Jeffries, has deemed that it is within our charge to make these decisions. Shouldn't that letter be to us?
Well, so I just say that could be, but at the time we had the meeting, I think David.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying going forward.
I get that. Yeah, I know you're right. I think you're right. So hopefully the letter would come to both of us. When they want to write it to us, a copy of the Board of Selectmen. I think the idea is just to have both of those committees notified.
Sure.
Michael Ray, did you want to suggest an amendment to the sentence that?
Yes. I think I would like for there to be a deletion of, rather than being too focused on the Boys and Girls Club. I think I just caution the members to remain focused on the charge of the committee and what precipitated the formation of the committee.
Okay, so I will delete from rather forward, basically, so the sentence will read, Michael Ray Jeffries cautioned the committee to remain focused on the town office needs, period.
Sure. As you adjust the spelling of my name as well, do you need me to spell that for you, Tanner?
I think that actually came up because I cut and pasted this from the architect's notes first. So I'll go back through and
I
just,
apologize.
so,
Make sure.
but we'll get it straightened
Yeah.
out.
It's misspelled often. It's okay.
I was gonna say,
I got-
Michael Ray, you can misspell Tom's name now.
I confess, I did it, Michael Ray, when I was adding you to the signature block on the thing, and then I'm like, I better look at this. And anyways, all right. Does anybody else have any edits? Do we still want to table it, or do we want to do we think Tanner has enough thing where we could make a motion to approve subject to modification? I'll accept the motion either way.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes based on the discussed modifications.
All right. Is there a second?
Brian
Second.
Lehman, I second.
Okay, Brian seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote, no particular order. Brian?
Yeah.
Dave Blatt?
Yes.
Tanner Cole?
Aye.
Dave Pascos?
Aye.
And Michael Ray Jeffries?
Aye.
An aye from me. Tanner, thank you. I really appreciate you stepping up and doing that for us.
No sweat.
So now I do want to talk about the getting whole here on the past minutes. I circulated an email that suggested a plan of attack, so to speak, and I do want to respond to Mr. Allison's comments. I did send those minutes to the town clerk after we approved them. I don't know why they're not on the website. So I did notice that myself as I was preparing late last week and this week for this meeting. So I have to follow up with the town clerk's office and figure that out. But we just need to come up with a plan to get this done, like prior to next meeting. I want to have this to be a fairly significant agenda item so we can approve these. Does anybody have any thoughts? So I do apologize if I jumped the gun a little bit. I thought we had decided that I would email offline and sort of try to deal with this so that we could have this done expeditiously. But at least one member commented that perhaps we should make sure we're doing this in a public meeting. I understand that we had a clerk prior, and I'm just not willing to. I'm not willing to rehash what happened. We are where we are, and I'm interested in working together as a group to expeditiously get this done. That's why I suggested so just for the public's understanding, I'm suggesting that we just divide these up, and a couple of us we each take a couple meetings, and when we get them done. So I'm happy to take anybody's comments either in favor or opposed to that, or other proposals.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't know what you have against me when you gave me the 3-hour interview one. but I've made it through the first hour. In fact,
All right.
the interesting thing is it was a meeting I was not able to attend because I was out of town, and so I guess it was helpful for me to rehash it again. But I made it through the first hour. More than happy to continue doing the notes for that.
It was an arbitrary exercise on my
I
part.
am only kidding. Yeah, I'll get you back someday now.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so far I've got the agendas pulled for those 2 meetings that you had me on the list for, and have not had a chance to get back to the YouTube videos, but I've got the links to both of them. So I'm hoping by early next week, I should be well into both of those meetings.
Okay. Anybody else? Is this do we feel like this is an appropriate way to proceed?
I'm not sure we have much choice at this point,
I kind of agree. Either-
unfortunately.
Okay.
And as long as we can all agree at the time that we need to approve them, that they're substantially accurate or totally accurate, I should say, for each of the individual meetings, I don't see a problem with it.
And for these, if we could try to make an appointment, I mean, I get that this is a lot of extra work here and it's a little bit, but if we could try to forward them along, I think Tanner getting them out today, this is not aimed at you, Tanner, but to the extent that we're going to have like a bunch of these to review, if we could just if we can try to get them a day or two or as much time as we can prior to our next meeting, that would be helpful, at least for me anyways.
Yeah, and I mean, from my perspective, I went through everything today and there's a lot of formatting just to try to keep everything consistent and follow the agenda. I mean, I can certainly circulate the minutes I prepared for last meeting in a pages or Word format that's a little easier to work with. But it's just going to be a lot of work. I mean, you know, as a process, the minutes are supposed to be a fairly accurate description of what transpired at each meeting. So theoretically, each one of us go back to all these meetings again. You know, I'm sure some of it will be fresh in our mind, the major talking points that we discussed. I'm not even sure how it works in terms of new members on the committee. My understanding is they can vote on the minutes, but at that point, they should probably go back and watch a lot of these meetings. So, you know, we're just gonna have to do the best we can under the circumstances, and anything I can do to circulate my template, so to speak, or whatever.
I'll circulate, if we, given that we decide this route, I'll circulate a template so that everybody has it. And unless you made some modifications, Tanner, that you think would be helpful.
No, I mean,
yeah.
like I'm in the process of doing the minutes for this meeting as we're going.
Oh, right.
I'm just, you know, so it matches the agenda and
Yeah.
everything's organized the same way. And I think it's helpful to have that to start with. That's all.
Gotcha. And Tanner, I can send you the
Seal.
yeah, I can send you the agenda in Word format too, so you can just.
Yep.
I'll do that. I'll make sure I do that.
Yep. Excellent.
Okay. Do we want to take a vote on this as a way forward, or what? I'll take Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the plan by the chair for the minutes.
Okay, second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just one quick question that I'd like to clarify. In the event of unanimous votes on anything during a meeting, is there really a need to list each individual member and their response? Can you use a unanimous decision? I believe you can, but I wouldn't do it unless we agree.
Well, the reason I called it out was because we're doing a roll call vote due to the remote meeting. So in my mind, that was the most accurate way to do it. So.
Let's just do belt and suspenders here. I'm an engineer. Belt and suspenders, buddy.
My thought was that if it's unanimous, that the statement that the roll call vote was unanimous of the members present at the meeting. I think that covers it also.
I get it. I personally, I think either way would work, but if Tanner's going to run with it that way moving forward, let's just, for the sake of consistency, thank you. You know, let's just do it. It's a fixed number that we have to get through here. So that's
fine.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, I'll take a roll call. Brian?
Aye.
Dave Passios?
Aye.
Dave Blatt?
Aye.
Tanner Cole?
Aye.
Michael Ray Jeffries?
Muted.
You're muted, Michael.
Aye.
And an aye from me. Thanks, everybody.
Good. Is that unanimous? No, I'm only kidding.
Well, it's unanimous.
Sorry, I'll stop. I'll put
Well, we need a little levity. Every once in a while, I should say. Okay, moving on. And let me just say before I move on, I appreciate, not only do I appreciate Tanner stepping up here moving forward, but I appreciate everybody stepping up and helping us clean this up. And so thank you very much for that. Let me know if you need help, because I want to get this done. So if you don't think that you can get to it, let me know and I'll try to help and step in. All right. The next agenda is a status update from the architect. So I will pass the floor off, give you the floor, Tom and Ed, and let you folks decide how you want to tackle that. One of these days, I'm going to figure out how to screen share with you guys.
Tom, do you want to
Yeah.
go through our agenda?
If you want to start and then I will
Yeah.
do the
You know,
pictures.
let me try this.
Has the committee been sent all those documents we sent over this morning?
Yes, except that I did not get the second one you sent, and truthfully, I didn't have a chance to circle back and check the TCP,
The
what do you call it? The online thing.
Yeah,
spot.
yeah. I
So
got
I think I think I might see if you can share your screen, Tom or Ed.
It's the environmental report on the meeting folder.
Okay.
No, I'm just checking with Ed.
Oh,
Of course, the location.
It's let me check.
So how many documents should there be? We
Well,
received 10.
yeah, and then they had suggested that it was going to be another follow-up email because of the file size, and I did not get that follow-up email. So.
Okay.
Yeah, the environmental report was about 45 megabytes. It was 276 pages. So I think it went back. I think it went through to the Lunenburg address. It got kicked back on your Gmail address. So you find it in the Lunenburg because I didn't get it ejected. But
Mr.
me
Chair,
look.
can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
I think Heather had set up a Dropbox or something similar for large files, and this is what we used when we first got the architect's files.
Yeah.
Maybe we can pass that on to the architects for them to use in the future.
They set up they have set up a
We have a Project FTP site set up.
yeah, which I can send along.
Okay, because that way we can access whenever we need. or
Yeah,
whatever we
I'll send that information off. I apologize. I think I
No
trimmed I think I cut that off. So can you
All the documents we sent are in that meeting folder.
Okay. You want me? Can you try to share your screen? Does it work? Have you tried
Let me try. So let's see if this works.
Tom, do you want to go in order of the agenda you wrote so we don't bounce all over the place? So we're somewhat
Sure. Yeah. So the first looks like you're seeing the screen. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's working. So whatever I did appears to have worked. So this will be easier than you having to tell me what to.
Okay.
So the first item's the VDCO scan update, Tom.
Yeah. So when we met last time, the day before, we had a couple of staff to come and scan the inside, outside of the building, and we sent a couple of images to Greg as they were putting the thing together, and but finally they have been converted. So right now it's just sheer curiosity. Just want to show you. It is not okay. Yeah, it's pretty high profile. So I just want to show you what it looked like originally when it started with the scan. So that's the inside of the building, and this is just curiosity stuff. So this is what the scanner create, what they call as point clouds. So this is all from a couple of scanners that we use, 2 people over a day, maybe a day, 2 partial days. So this is the existing building is on the computer. So we rendered the existing building. So this is the second step. So if first step is scanning, second step is we created these images based on the scan. And the third step, which we do have, is they are now in Revit or BIM files, BIM models. So we have the existing conditions plans, existing conditions, exterior elevations, sections, they're all in the system. I just haven't had a chance to create a PDF to show you, but I thought that's pretty interesting stuff. See some images from the building, and the beauty is the accuracy. It's not, oh, it's a pretty picture, but it's just, if we want to say, how many doors do you have? How many windows? We can just tabulate it in about 10, 15 minutes. So that's the beauty of this system. So let me, I hope I don't disconnect. Ed didn't say I'm the technically challenged person here. So, so the second thing that we did was we reviewed the existing assessment report, and Christopher Lucchetti, one of the architects, came, and actually John Nonda was very, very gracious, spent a lot of time with him. We went through the building, look at the exterior envelope, the interiors, and then we prepare a report, and then we review the report or the summary with John, and I believe it was acceptable. We didn't go sideways. So that report, or that draft report, was included in was one of the files that we submitted. As part of the report, we started looking at the building code assessment, and again, that was in the same PDF file. But one thing that we are still trying to decide is, because this is going to be, we're not tearing the entire building down. So it might be full renovations, it might be renovation with addition. So we're using the International Existing Building Code, and there are different levels of interpretation. And so depending on how much we are changing or renovating, it will trigger either a level 2 or level 3. And that also may have impact on the structural and the mechanical design. At this point, since we don't know how extensive we are working in the building, so I'm keeping, we haven't really decided on level 2 or level 3. But Ed, I don't know if you want to add on to that piece.
Yeah, definitely. As Tom was saying, with the International Existing Building Code, the work area method, which the design team's using for this project, has 3 different levels. Level 1 is essentially if you're just removing and replacing, as example, wallpaper, you're removing something, replacing it in kind. Then there's level 2, worst case is level 3. Level 3 is if you're modifying more than 50% of the area of the building, which is a good possibility for this project. But we really don't know where we're at as far as level 2 or level 3 until the final program is put together and we know what spaces we're moving around, if we're putting on an addition, if we're gutting all the interior rooms and putting in new rooms. We really don't know yet. But the thing about level 3 is it will most likely trigger a wind and seismic analysis of the entire building with potential upgrades. And it would require seismic connections for all the masonry walls back to the roof diaphragms. The re-roofing project, which is in the report, one of the documents we sent to you was the draft of the existing conditions report, which includes all the AE disciplines. So one of the recommendations is to replace the roof in total. So that's going to require a structural analysis of the existing roof framing system, for gravity loads, as well as snow loading, wind loading. But to get back to level 3, it would require quite a bit of structural analysis. And it also affects the architectural work, it affects the MEP work, it affects accessibility. Same with level 2. Level 2 affects all design disciplines, just to different extents. A building addition is completely separate. It's not part of level 1, level 2, level 3. That falls into the addition section of the IEBC, which kicks you into the IBC for new construction. So it's a little early to say in the process exactly what's going to happen as far as the building code goes, and that'll shake out of the work that the architects are doing for programming and repurposing the building. So more to come on the code review. If I could just touch on the existing conditions report, the draft, again, it includes the architectural assessments, it includes the structural, the MEP assessments, the civil engineering, civil site assessments, and those are all the observations that were made over the 1 to 2 days that the team was out on the site. We've documented the existing conditions, areas that need to be repaired, recommendations for repaired. In general, the building from a structural standpoint has good bones. We didn't find any significant structural issues as a whole with the building. There's a couple areas that need some repair work, and the boiler room with that chimney is in tough shape. The report discusses that should be considered with the new HVAC design, if that chimney is even going to be needed. If it's not needed, it probably should be removed. The block walls that are where the boiler room is and the garage in the 1975 addition, those are in poor shape, most likely due to freeze-thaw damage caused by the paint coating that was put on the outside of the block. The paint acts as a vapor barrier. It holds in moisture, so in the winter, you get the freeze-thaw action, which is disintegrating the block itself. But in general, structurally, the building's in good shape. Architecturally, I mentioned the roof needs to be replaced. The membrane's beyond its useful life. We saw active roof leaks in the little 1975 addition. Lots of signs of past roof leaks in the ceiling tiles. In general, the architectural finishes should be replaced. The floor tiles, the ceiling tiles. The building's it's seen a lot of good years of use, and as part of the renovation job, those types of finishes need to be replaced. So the report gets into more details about doors and windows. All the exterior sealants need to be replaced. Probably about 33% of the exterior brickwork needs to be repointed. There's some cracked brick. The stonework at the main entry needs to be repointed. So those types of details are discussed in the existing conditions report. I touched on at the last meeting about some of the MEP issues, which are elaborated on in that existing conditions report. Right now, the boiler plant has plenty of capacity. There's one boiler in there that might be able to be removed and salvaged for another building in the town. So as the design progresses and the MEP design progresses, we'll have more recommendations about the boiler plant. All the HVAC units are worn and should be replaced as part of a new project. And there's other comments about the electrical system, getting rid of the old-fashioned screw-in style fuses and going with the traditional, the new circuit breaker systems. And there's some other recommendations to improve the electrical, the fire alarm, and the sprinkler system are in the report. Tom touched on the environmental report, which if you haven't seen it, it's on the FTP site, or we can try the Dropbox. It's a 276-page report. It covers what's called the Phase 1 environmental assessment for the property and the building. And just in general, just looking at some notes here. The findings in general in one of the switchgear rooms, there's some floor surface staining where some old oil-filled transformers are. That was identified in the environmental report. The report noted some past historic number 4 fuel oil spills that were reported to Mass DEP. Those cases are closed. The building is on state record for asbestos issues. We've also made requests to the school department and the Mass Department of Public Health through the Freedom of Information Act to get additional environmental information on the property. But there's a lot in the report to look at. The report not only covers the building, the site, what's in the ground, groundwater, vapor transmission, air, the building itself, but it also discusses properties in the area that could contribute their environmental issues to this property. So if there was a spill on a neighbor's property at some point, the report talks about how that may or may not affect this property. So there's a lot of information in that report. It also touched on some of the typical hazardous waste that you'd find in a building that needs to be disposed of, like fluorescent light bulbs, old ballast, paint cans, old batteries, some storage drums, things of those nature. So it's a very, very comprehensive report that we've submitted. The asbestos report I just got tonight, I'll be forwarding that to you tomorrow. That's the report for the building proper. So I'll forward that to Heather and Greg tomorrow. I do have 2 quick questions. We'd like to know, at one point we're told Unitil provides the gas to the building, and we called Unitil and they told us that's not the case anymore. So I have 2 questions. One is if you could tell us who provides gas to the building. The second, if we get confirmation if the building's on town sewer. Those were a couple questions from our civil engineer that they had. I don't know if anybody has the.
Yeah, I think I know the answer, but could I ask John Londa to comment on that?
So the gas is provided by National Grid. And secondly, yes, the Positive is tied in on town sewer.
It is on town sewer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
So that's just kind of a summary on the existing conditions report, where we're at with the building code review, the environmental assessments and hazmat right now. I don't know if there's any questions. I'm sure you may not have had a chance to read every document yet, but I don't know if there's any immediate questions.
Yeah, thanks very much. I will open it up to questions from the board. If I didn't have a chance to review it today, I just, like you guys, I forwarded a few minutes after I got it, so I've been working all day. But if there are any questions relative to the presentation that Tom and Ed just gave, I'll take that now. And I can't see everybody when we're sharing the screen, so anybody?
You move.
I have. Go ahead,
Grid
Dave.
video, you can see everybody if you cared.
Oh,
I can stop share for a sec.
no, that's okay. I'll figure it out. You'd think I'd be able to figure this out. I do this all the time, but I can't.
So, Mr. Chair.
If I may,
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh,
It's
Oh, sorry, Tanner.
Tanner.
I didn't see. Go
I
ahead.
have more of a general question, which is, I feel like at some point, the committee as a whole would benefit from having a little bit of direction in terms of what we're looking at cost-wise. We've obviously got some decisions ahead of us in terms of what the final build-out of the building looks like. And in my mind, it's easier to make those decisions if you have some understanding of which direction we're going in terms of cost. So for example, I mean, I thought for sure the building needed a roof, but what does a roof cost? And as we discuss, hazardous materials abatement and repointing brickwork and things like this, I mean, are we in the $10 million price tag range? Are we headed to 15 million? And I know it's difficult to come up with precise pricing without having a complete understanding of programming. But I also feel like we kind of need to have some sort of indication from the architects to the best of their ability, like, geez, this project is getting north of 10 million, so that we can, as a committee, deliberate and use that information to decide, okay, well, are we gonna add this use or that use, or what do we have to work with? That's all.
Yeah, I'll respond if I
Go
may.
ahead. Yep,
So
go ahead,
what-
Tom.
What we are trying to do is a couple folks like tonight, we will have a sense of where the project is heading from the program standpoint. I mean, we'll discuss, do we need an addition, or do we want to just keep the existing building? And then the next thing is that there are certain components that will not change. There was some, I would say, infrastructure related components that because these spaces are primarily offices or conference rooms, moving the rooms around really doesn't change the use of the building. So we can provide some really quick order of magnitude dollar per square foot cost. Obviously, we'll throw in a lot of contingencies because we don't have the detailed drawings yet, but as we, it is to the interest of the committee and also to our team that we want to have a feel of where things are. So yeah, I think after tonight, we'll start identifying components and just be able to talk to our cost estimator and say, well, these are some of the major items, and what do you think are the dollar per square foot? And then as we move further down, we would be able to break it down to say, well, the whole roof is going to be probably X dollar a square foot, and we have X square feet of roof. So it's important that the cost is part of the design. I mean, the cost has to develop as we're talking at architectural or engineering systems. So right now we might just have, okay, infrastructure is X dollars, we're replacing the mechanical system as Y dollars a square foot, and we'll go from there. But we'll start identifying systems.
Thanks, Tom. I echo what Tanner said. I think that'll be very helpful as soon as we can get it. I mean, we don't want inaccurate information, obviously, but I totally agree. So I realized here I'm not really doing what I said I was going to do in my introductory comments. So I'm just going to go right down and just roll call here and see if anybody has any comments. So we heard from Tanner. How about Brian? You got any questions?
Thanks. Also, to go off of what Tanner was talking about, I'd like to see the architects come back to us with questions that we could discuss and then potentially have a vote on or put on in a future agenda for an action item so we can kind of vote on items.
Okay. Dave Passios.
Yeah, in principle, I agree with what Tanner's saying, but we also have just heard from Ed that, you know, until a determination on level 2 or level 3 is really firm, some of the component costs are going to be impossible to be accurate, get accurate numbers. The roof is one in particular. If you got to start connecting the roof framework to the walls at level 3, then you're looking at substantially more than, at least my understanding of how Ed explained it, substantially more cost than level 2. So I just caution that we don't bring numbers out too early without a way to support why the numbers are what they are, and that's going to hold pretty much through the project.
Okay. Dave Blatt. Oh, do you want to address that, Tom?
Yeah, I completely agree. And in our experience, when somebody see a certain number that it sticks, so if it goes up, the architect's head would get chopped off. Oh, this is being taped. I shouldn't say that. So we want to be very careful, but I think if we do it in such a way to give a general, we'll maybe put it in different components instead of doing it all together, because there are, Steve and Ed was saying there are different enough moving parts, but we do want to give a sense, and we might just say, well, at this point, level 2, it might be X dollars in this range, and if it bumped up to level 3, it might be this range. So we'll be using ranges and lots of fine prints to just qualify those numbers. So we'll try to get the balance, because I understand the need to know where the project is at in general. So we might be able to say, well, if it is a level 2, I just have to do 2 designs. If it's level 2, it would be, so some of the components are not going to change. I mean, the brickwork, either level 2 or 3 is going to be the same. So what we need to do is to identify some of those scope items. For the next meeting, we'll have some of the, not an outline spec, but more high level than that, and just say, these are some of the elements that need to be replaced or upgraded.
And Tom, I think we also need to keep in mind that any costs that we provide in the near future, order of magnitude, because for an example, if you just looked at a roof replacement project all by itself, single trade, you're going to get one price. If you fold that into a major building renovation project, it's going to cost differently. So there's economies of scale given the project and what's involved with the project. So we've got to just keep that in mind as we're putting these together, that it won't be apples and apples, a single discipline, single contractor project versus a big multidisciplinary job. They're not equal.
I guess my concern is that we've done studies in the past and come up with per square foot numbers. And at the end of the day, when we have a complete proposal together, those numbers mean nothing. It's the overall project. Yes, you can take the overall project cost and divide it by the square feet and come up with a square foot number. But you know, estimating cost per square foot, we've done this 2 or 3 times already. That's not what we're after in the finished product anyway. And I know you're well aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to cut anybody off. Dave, are you, anything else, Dave Passios?
I'm all set.
Okay. Dave Blatt.
So, is the plan tonight to review the, some of the proposals that they've had? I'm just trying to understand the scope. I agree wholeheartedly that, putting dollar figures is going to be imperative for us to make decisions about what we do. But are we looking at, are we going to be looking to review the findings of the square footage, how we correlated that, and what some of these 2 proposals that they've done, any feedback there, or am I too early for that?
So I'll say that I would like to, if Tom and Ed feel that you have final, I think last time you presented some initial results from your working group sessions, and I see that we have I think it must be the Lunenburg Space Program Executive, Lunenburg Space Program.
So
It sounds a little funny, but the Lunenburg Space Program Executive Summary, I mean, are you prepared to kind of discuss some of those things tonight? I'm really interested to hear that stuff.
yeah, so I want to start with the process since we met 2.5 weeks ago, and some of the preliminary analysis that we did. So
That's fine. So if you're going to go into that, that's fine. Let's take that up next. But let me just give Michael Ray an opportunity to ask any questions he might have on what you already presented. Anything, Michael Ray?
I don't have any questions. I'm in agreement though with, I think that Tanner brings up a really good point, that cost is certainly going to be part of this discussion that we have to talk about. Though I agree with Mr. Passios that we're probably a bit too soon. I think we still need to get the rest of the engineering analysis. We need to see what this code review is, and I think that once we have that cost certainly is going to shape the discussion and conversation. I just want to be cautious that we don't we live in a soundbite world where, we can meet here for 2 hours tonight, and what gets relayed can fit in 180 characters. And when there's a cost associated with it, then I think we need to be mindful that before the committee starts putting out numbers, that to get absorbed, that there should be a plan. So I would just urge that we do this in a piecemeal kind of way, that until we get to the end result, that when we're weighing things, that we say, all right, if we were to go route A, that there's route A, there's route B, there's route C, and this is the relative cost for each. I think that that's absolutely necessary to be part of the discussion. And but I guess I do have a question. The engineering report. So I did pull it up while we were having, not the engineering, the environmental report. I did pull it up while we were having this conversation, and it's a lot of it's a lot of process. But if I can just ask Ed, if there were anything that came about in that surprised you, that was a little alarming,
Well, the purpose of the phase 1 report is to do a visual assessment of the property inside and out, and to do a record search. That's what the purpose of the phase 1 is. If there was something that was of alarming, say if there was our environmental engineer found an actual oil spill out there, that would trigger a phase 2 analysis, where we would actually go out there and do some digging, take some ground soil samples, drill for groundwater. They didn't recommend a phase 2 assessment. So they didn't find anything of concern to trigger going back out to do physical sampling and testing. They just identified, we know there's always been an asbestos issue out there. It's on the state records. The town has a 3-year plan for the asbestos. Our asbestos evaluation concurred with that and has documented the asbestos. One of the things I guess you could say was a surprise is they found some oil staining under some of the oil-filled transformers I had mentioned in the transformer room, and there's a floor drain within 4 feet of the spill. So that was identified as a potential issue. The stain didn't run right up to the drain based on the visual observations, but those transformers weren't tested to see if there were PCBs in it, so we don't know if the oil contained PCBs. But the recommendation would be, the electrical design as we move forward would be to remove those PCB transformers that are in there. I didn't go through all 276 pages myself at this point, but I didn't see anything that was in the executive summary that raised any big concern. The only item that was flagged was the oil stains on that slab. The asbestos that we're aware about, the past number 4 oil spills. There was a 10,000, 20,000 gallon two fuel tanks on the property that had spills that were documented. They were removed. The DEP's closed the cases on both of those. So nothing in addition was flagged in the executive summary for continued follow-up. But I would have to read through it in detail, because they went into great detail on all the abutting properties in the area that may be potential contributors to the site. But I don't recall anything in their table saying that ABC's property had a spill and it was affecting this particular property. I don't recall seeing anything in there. It would have been in the executive summary if it was a big concern.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay, so I'll hand the floor back to you folks if you want to kind of run through your next.
Yeah, so just want to see some of the things that we did and how we gather some information. So when we met last time, we met with almost all of the groups except the cable access group. So we we did have a conversation with them, and also I sent the draft meeting notes to the folks that we met. In some cases, I wanted to make sure that I got the facts right. In some cases, I had more questions for them. So almost all of them responded, and so we sent a revised user meeting notes, and all the revisions, new information are in red. And so that was in the user meeting 081720 PDF. One of the reasons we did the executive summary was to say what are some of the high-level information that we want to bring up to the committee. And the key thing that we noticed for the PACC group is obviously they want the studio and the control room to be in the same together versus in two separate buildings. But Steve Walker mentioned about a kitchen studio, which implies, and the way that they need to make this work is really a commercial kitchen. So there will be access for natural gas. They will need the requirements for a commercial kitchen for additional exhaust and so forth. So, and obviously soundproof for all the studio related rooms. But I just, and then I put on the bottom of the executive summary, just highlighted these areas that they are potential costs, additional cost information. So that said, with this information, we went back to the space program, and so let me just close this other. I don't know if you can.
So, and folks, if you have your email up, this I think is entitled Lunenburg Space Program Executive Summary. It's a funny name. I'm sorry.
I can change that.
No. Lunenburg Space Program Executive Summary 08-17-20, if you want to pull it up on your screen.
So right now, so what we did was just a quick recap. We had the information from a study done 4 years ago. We went back, met with the users, and kind of reassessed some of the areas. The areas are in general pretty close to what was done, again, except the school that was more because of the after school program. So that was the big items. So that's the basis of saying, okay, how much space do we need in this building? So with that, I'd like to just jump back to the way that we try to process this information. So last time we showed this diagram, which is really the building diagram. This is not, and that was before we had the VDCO accurate Revit BIM drawing. So that was based on quick calculations, looking at the existing building. So the building square footage is about 45,000 square feet. So, and that really doesn't help us looking at planning because there are corridors and stuff. So the next step that we did for this meeting is to say, how much space do we have to fill in the blanks, fill in the rooms? Granted that we're leaving the corridors the way they are. Again, this is a quick assessment. The other thing that we found out as we add and our different architects look at the 1975 wing as there are cracks, and that we are just assuming that at this point that we're not going to put anything in it, that we might just have to demolish it from the safety and maintenance standpoint. So back to the area calculations, we took some of the simple spaces and we come up with, and again, we're not counting the area for the mechanical rooms. We're not counting the gym. We just counted all the classrooms and some of the offices for the school and the cafeteria. So we came up with about 29,000 square feet, what we call departmental gross. That is some of the, basically it's all the rooms with some of the corridors within the space. And then the next diagram that we look at is based on the space program that we come up with, and also the adjacencies. Some of the departments, they want to be close together. For example, the Board of Health, the Conservation, Planning Board, and Building Department, they want to be together. So we try to say, well, what would make sense? Granted that we haven't got input from you folks, just area-wise, what will fit in the existing building without doing any work. So this particular diagram, we're saying if we don't build an addition, we can pretty much fit all the program spaces in, starting with the bottom here, which is, we consider this more or less a public area. In this wing, we could have put the treasurer, assessors, accounting, town clerk office. Across the hall, this will be the block for Board of Health and the other three departments, town manager's office, and the IT and some of the miscellaneous offices here. And then the rest of the building, because this entrance is closer to the school, we may want to consider putting all the school superintendent offices and the after-school program here. The PACC is in the middle, try to have them isolated from the public thoroughfare. Still considered that 1975 wing being replaced. We started segregating. Let's say the building is going to be closed at night, all the town offices are closed, but it's possible that we can still have some of the areas open for community meetings, like the cafeteria space or the gymnasium, or maybe this can be some staff functions. So this is the very initial take of what some of the adjacencies, and just do a quick test fits of the space. And then let me just quickly go to the next one. So we thought, well, this does not incorporate the Boys and Girls Club. If we do want the Boys and Girls Club, we need to have more space. So this is the next diagram that we put together, and essentially we're saying that we need to put an addition in the back in order to fit all the spaces together. So all the town offices in this wing is pretty much the same. Superintendent, school department is pretty much the same. We thought as an option we could put the PACC here, which is more than 3,500 square feet, and then maybe we could put the Boys and Girls Club over there and have it close to the after-school program. Again, we are trying to separate the building complex so that it can be secure at night or after hours. So that's some of the process of thinking. That's where we are at based on the information that we get when we interview the different groups in the town and come up with or verify some of the area needs that they have. Don't know if there's any initial reactions or.
Thanks for, I found that enlightening. Do we have any questions? And again, I'll just go right down here, no particular order. Dave Passios.
Yeah, other than the shared conference room, I'm a little concerned about meeting space. Are the requests, departmental requests for a small meeting area built into the town office department blocks. In other words, into breaking up those rooms in such a way that they'd have a private small meeting room, or do we only have the shared staff room and the shared conference room as meeting rooms?
So in most of the departments, other than the town manager's office, they would like to have some sort of a shared conference room, meaning that it would be outside their box. But for the town managers, there's a built-in conference room within this box. So right now, we were thinking of, because we have this 2,500 square feet space here that can be subdivided, and then there's also this might be a location that also can be subdivided into smaller conference rooms. So the next step for us, if in general, if these departments are in the relative close position, is we're going to start subdividing it in, instead of saying one big box as Board of Health, Conservation Committee, Planning Committee, planning and building departments. We're going to start subdividing those boxes and also identifying spaces. And there were some rooms that we didn't identify. For example, there were some rooms like in this area that I believe might be an IT type departments here right now. So we still have to go to the next level and say, well, would it make sense if this is a shared staff lounge, or would it be better if it is back here, and if it is better that this is these are conference rooms? So that level of discussions we still need to have with you folks.
Okay, one other quick question, and this speaks to the space needs. I'm not an architect or an engineer, so I'm going to throw this question out there. There may or may not be an answer to it. Is there a general industry standard for municipal departmental space requirements? I think that's the best way I can ask the question. And are the spaces that are being requested realistic to those numbers?
Let me ask in one, I can check. I don't know if there's a municipal standards. Two, these areas are based on what we see as their use. So for example, if it is a one-person office, we would just probably give them 80 to 90 square feet. But if that office needs to have 2 desks, then it's bigger. So we're using some industry standards for laying out offices. And or if they say, okay, we also need a little conference table because it's, for example, the town manager's office, she meets with folks. There's a small conference table. So we look at those areas, and we believe those areas are reasonable. But we will check to see if there's any standards for municipal buildings. The other thing is, once we started laying things out, we might say, okay, that room is 180 square feet, but we are still trying to fit things in. So we might have to make compromises. It might be 170 or that type of thing. So.
Right. Okay, just last comment, and this will be, I'm sure, in the next phase of this, as you just said, breaking down those general spaces into the smaller boxes, and that is the service counter areas that are going to be required for those blocks, especially the treasurer, collector, and town clerks section. They deal with the public on a regular basis. Board of Health, Planning Department also, but not, I believe, not as heavily as the pre-mentioned department, in that, you know, people come in to pay their tax bills and marriage licenses and all that kind of stuff. So the traffic to the treasurer, collectors, assessors, accountant, and town clerks area, I think is going to be the heaviest use area for the public into town offices. anybody can pipe up and correct me if you think I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm partial to the planning and conservation department because that's the only place that I ever go to a town hall, but that's because I'm an engineer. But I think you're probably right. I think as a general basis, those are probably the heaviest users, but I think they certainly they both need community public interface for sure, so. Okay, I'm gonna go down. Is that it, Dave?
I'm done. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. And again, these are in no particular order. They're just, you guys are flipping around on my screen here a little bit. So I'll go now to Michael Ray.
So thank you for putting together the plan. I just have a couple of, not so much questions as much as suggestions. So, well, I guess the first one is a question. So for the gym, is the intent for this to kind of be like the new location for the primary meeting space as well, as to kind of be that multi-use room for the seniors and for the community? Is that the intent?
The intent is to pretty much to keep the existing functions, for example, some after-school programs or on election day for voting, to maintain that big space. And we're trying to use that shared or the existing cafeteria that can be subdivided into smaller conference rooms, but it could be open as a 2,500 square foot meeting space if necessary. I don't know if I answered the question.
I think you did. So one thing that I would urge is that, you know, the second floor of Town Hall is our traditional kind of primary meeting space, and that if that space is no longer used, then a similar space will need to be created or used in this building. That's a pretty large meeting room. I think that there's also, because we have meetings that overlap there in time slots, that there's also going to be probably a need for there to be at least, I think right now we have 2 other additional kind of standard meeting spaces, 2 in the Ritter building, that there would be a need for 2 additional kind of static meeting spaces for groups. So that's one set of comments. The second is bathrooms. I think that there's, for sure in the school department, would be a need for child-only bathrooms, and then as well as a need for adult-only bathrooms. I know that a current design model that a lot of, I'm sure you've seen, is whenever children are involved to have open doors, or at least glass doors. Whereas when, you know, staff offices, that's not a need as much there. So I would just urge that as you plan this, that there's also some coordination with some of the security requirements that come with schools now, with preparing for active shooters or, you know, what have you, that's considered. And then for staff, that staff are also going to need, you know, certainly bathrooms that they can access, as well as a break room for them. And in this design, did you have an area already outlined for that?
Not really. Right now, we're thinking of this space, which is really the inside of the L or V, to be more of a general space because it's more centralized to most of the building. Obviously, still far away from the superintendent's area. And we're also trying to reuse the existing plumbing as much as possible. Granted that our engineer will do a calculations and say how many fixtures we really need based on, at this point, we know pretty much how many people will be using this space from the staff standpoint. So we will be able to calculate, see how many toilets and sinks and all that we have. But in terms of general locations, we like to keep the existing toilets in that general locations, but they will be reconfigured to ADA to the right number of fixtures and all that. We may use this area for the bathrooms for the kids, for the students, and they are not the right height, but we'll have to design it. But that's, again, I don't know if I answered the question.
I think you've answered it. I would also add that in that L space, as Mr. Pasfield's just referenced, that when I'm in town hall, or I haven't been there lately, but when I've been in town hall, it seems that there's a lot of people that come in for the treasurer's office and for the town clerk, and that there may be, I don't know if you've considered right across from the area that you have designated as shared staff, for that to be additional office space, just that little, there's like 2 rooms there on the corner there. I think you have that identified as, oh, those are the bathrooms. I didn't go to elementary school there, so I have a different frame of reference than I think probably most. But it seems that might be a good area, but hey, it's bathrooms. The other last question is that S Senior or SH Cone. What is that school? What is that?
Oh, it's a shared conference. It was an F, but then there was a wall here. Looks like an E.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next is David Blatt.
So once again, I'd like to thank you for the proposals and what you've put forward also. And just on my side, it was once again I thought of suggestions. The first thing I noticed is I was looking at these plans compared to what you gave us as the space needs for each department.
Yes.
And certain things don't seem to add up to the same. And I just of what you were thinking. So I was trying to take a look there. So you mentioned PAC mentioned needing like 2,300 square feet. You have them in one plan with like 4,000, and then the other plan here you have an addition for PAC. So I was wondering if we can rethink that based on that, as well as the school department offices talked about 7,300, 7,400 square feet, and you have them as over 9,000 square feet here.
Yeah. So the 9,000 would be the 74. Let's say for the school department, those are the net square footage, but then there.
Oh, I just lost you.
Yeah, I think you broke up there, Tom.
He's frozen.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Let's give it a,
Yeah.
let's give it a minute here.
so I, Mr. Chair, I believe this is a great start. Seeing these diagrams here, it's a
Yeah.
great start. And there's other areas there. One of the things, and I'm hoping he can hear me and not just that it's frozen. If not, the other gentleman can hear me. But like the stage for the gym, that could also be a shared conference room as well. Oh, so he just went off share. So maybe nope, he's gone for now.
Yeah, he bumped out.
All right, Ed, are you hearing us? You're on mute.
Yeah. I just texted Tom that he's frozen.
Okay, so I was going to say, Ed, that some of the
He's
things
having Wi-Fi issues. He just
Okay.
texted me.
So some of the things to think about, I thought was like there's already like a teacher's lounge built onto what would have been the stage in the gym, and perhaps that could be a shared conference room as well. If you look at some of the needs for what they were asking, like PAC was asking for separate rooms to be used for studios. Maybe those little rooms, those 3 little rooms in the front, would make a great little studios for PAC.
I'm sorry, where were those 3 little rooms? I'm taking.
Right across from the gym.
Okay.
Or perhaps for the Boys and Girls Clubs, those could be great little study rooms or something like that. Things
Okay.
like that. Okay. I agree. The cafeteria now as a shared conference room is fantastic. Where it can be split up, maybe two meetings can go on at the same time in that room based on a divider or some things like that, and then opening it up for larger town meetings. I know Mr. Jeffries would contest that they get excited when they get more than 20 people in the audience. That's like a big night, right? So usually it's more like 2 or 3, but so some nights it's nicer to have that intimacy of a smaller room And when they know it's going to be something big, they can have a larger room. But I think this is it's a nice plan in the fact that you've separated things well. You've created several different entrances that could be used. I also like to think about, as we're looking at the parking, perhaps is an easier way of doing like the handicap and doing different entrances for the public as you look at parking as well.
It's definitely something we're looking at. Our civil engineers going to be looking at the parking. Once we figure out, initially the original discussions were to remove that 1952 wing, the north wing, but as we continue looking at this, it looks like that wing's likely to stay, and that would have been one place to put expanded parking. So our civil engineer is going to be looking at the whole site for the additional parking as part of this project.
Okay, because one of the suggestions was, my suggestion, could have been to flip it. So where you have the school and superintendent right now, that being the town offices, and you can actually have that small parking lot there for handicap or something to that effect. So you can have that small parking lot and on that side for handicap, have an entrance right there and basically town offices right on that side. And then the rest of it would be more of a different crowd coming in. More would be school and community or something to that effect. But
Good
like I say, I know
idea.
you guys are going to do your job, do your due diligence and things of that sort. So I'm not worried there about that. But I do feel like there's a room to maybe put everything in there.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you. I took those notes and I'll make sure I get them to Tom.
In fact, there's also the conference room. There's also the room above the teacher's lounge in the gym. But I mean, you'd have to have handicap accessibility there. I don't know if that could be used for storage or something like that up top.
Okay.
Tom's back with us, and Tom, I'm sharing the screen here. I think, can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay, Dave, do
Sorry
you have
about
any,
that.
that's okay, that happens. Dave, do you have anything else?
No, like I said, guys, it's just
Wrong,
more
Dave.
of, I looked at it, I looked at the buildings, I look at what you have, and, things that are very good. I just the square footages aren't exact, but that's my biggest concern is that, we have larger square footage than some folks are asking for and just enough in other folks. So I do have a concern there.
When we looked at the next level of plans, we'll subdivide it because right now there's a lot of, we're consolidating several groups together. So, but I will also double check.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'll get back to you, Dave Passios. I'm gonna let, ask if Tanner has any other.
And no, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, my other question was you mentioned that the PAC was looking at a commercial kitchen. Is there any possibility of reusing the kitchen that's there?
I also have a question, yeah.
Tom again. So I did ask them that. I think is an adjacency issue. It would be nice. I was thinking you already have all this equipment, but it's a matter of if we can turn that into a studio, soundproofing and everything.
So they're looking at this, I think we've heard this before, so just to confirm, they're looking at this to have sort of production, cooking shows. Is that your sense?
Yeah, right.
All right.
So
Okay.
the equipment is not commercial, but we have to treat it.
Yeah, you're gonna want to, you're gonna
Just
have
have
to,
stoves.
you're gonna have to make a residential looking commercial kitchen.
I don't think they'll just use microwave to cook things. Then we won't have any of these problems if they use the microwave.
So, Mr. Chair, I also look at that as maybe, as Mr. Allison brought up, with the market and trying to do that, having something there as like an increase to the market and making that whole agricultural feel of Lunenburg, bringing that back would be a huge success, huge bonus for the community. Type of thing. So that's also as we look at the bonus there, as well as possibly the kitchen could be used during the day by staff and things of that sort. So it could be, you could be using that large conference area as a break room during the day, where it could be turned into town meetings at night and things of that sort. So multi-use, being
Yeah.
multi-use as much.
Yeah, I think I have a little to say on that when it's my turn, but I'll turn it over to Tanner here. Go ahead, Tanner.
I think we've pretty much covered most of the things that I was concerned about, so I'm all set.
Okay. I wanted to say, it sort of what David just said and key off of something that Michael Ray said. Yeah, it seems to me that like 3 places to have public meetings is really probably a minimum. And I totally agree with Michael Ray with respect to the size of the primary one. We'll definitely have to accommodate all of the space that we have, all the seating capacity that we have in the current meeting hall. But I would say, I mean, I've been in that room where there's been standing room only. So, you know, I think, I don't know what the capacity of that room is, but it's, you know, it probably would be nice to have something that can certainly surge to something a little bit larger if needed. And then, you know, we've had our meeting before where there's been a meeting at town hall, there's been a meeting at the one of the rooms in the Ritter, and then we were in the third, you know, the sort of the third space that's really small, and it's a table, it's like a conference room that we're in. So I see a real need for that. And I'd see that as a minimum. I'd say that's sort of, you know, that's maintaining status quo, which I'm not sure is enough. And so, and then, you know, having said that, ways to incorporate flexibility to the design with you know, the ability to use spaces for multiple things, I think is, in my mind, a great thing. If we can, if there's ways to do that, that makes sense. The other thing that I wanted to just point out, or just a comment, is that relative to the meeting rooms, the ability to video these things in a seamless manner is really important. You know, so I don't know how that relates to PAC. I'm assuming they had maybe some things to say about that. And I do want to say that Mr. Walker, I think his name, was hoping to attend this meeting. He will likely be at the next meeting representing the PAC. Has some things he'd like to, you know, work with us on. So, you know, anyway, being able to video, and, you know, who knows, nowadays video conferencing type capabilities is becoming more of an issue too, or more of a desire, I should say. So, but I just in general wanted to echo what others have said. It looks like a good first start. It's very enlightening to me to see this, you know, layout, and I appreciate you walking us through it. I don't want to silence anybody. Does anybody else have anything else they want to say relative to this? Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks. I wanted to echo a lot of what other people said too. Just going around the building, the town offices, I like the idea of conference tables being available in those areas. The shared staff room in the yellow, I thought that would be great for community use. It's kind of blocked off outside of the town offices, but maybe the town office could still access it to use it if they needed the office space or the meeting space. Looking at the bathrooms and talking about hearing from Matthew Allison too about community events outside, it seemed like if there was a community event near like the modular or the potential addition, if it was in that area, there might be a long walk to get to the bathrooms. So I don't know if there's potential to make outside access to those bathrooms, or if the plumbing was nearby, can you make a small addition of a bathroom potentially there? Something where there might be access to the bathrooms for the outdoor events in that section. People already talked about the gym, but I think there's a lot of usages there, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or night volleyball or basketball clubs, and obviously the voting.
Senior center.
I do know that voting uses some storage too, and also the town uses storage. And I didn't see much space kind of segregated just for storage. I know some of the rooms that are listed in the school department, they're actually just full with storage. So that might be something to explore. I like the idea of the large shared conference room, going up the shared conference rooms and other spaces. In regards to the PAC in the Boys and Girls Club, I felt like it made sense to have the PAC in the building. And I think the public would be hesitant to put on an addition. And I think that might be portrayed as the Boys and Girls Club, or is potentially gaining 3,600 square feet, and the cost could be associated with that. So I'm hesitant to support an addition. And then the school superintendent area, I think still needs more work about details, and obviously working with the superintendent to figure out what's going to go where. I guess that's it for now.
Sorry if I
and then
forgot.
for Dave,
Brian,
Dave Blatt also mentioned the possibly flipping the school and the town offices. I thought that could be a potential idea too, to kind of link the town offices with the meeting spaces. So that could potentially make sense. I think that's it.
Thanks, Brian. Sorry if I missed you there, buddy. I thought I had called earlier. Anybody else before we?
Greg, if
Go
you're
ahead.
done, if everybody else is done, a couple of things that come to mind. The idea of flipping, one thing to really keep in mind there is that the way it's laid out right here in front of us on the screen right now, your student body access to the building is closest to the middle high school. You flip it, and you know, the people concerned about the kids having to walk past town offices to get to the present Boys and Girls Club, it will compound that issue, because now they're going to have to, you know, that traffic is going to be going past the town offices. So you're again putting town offices even deeper into the educational campus. Just bring that up as a caution. The other thing is that if we seriously go forward with a commercial kitchen, which I honestly have a problem with, and I will say that right up front, I really think the place for it is where the existing kitchen is. The plumbing and sewer lines come in at that point of the building, if I'm not mistaken. There's already a grease trap in place. There are certain requirements for a commercial kitchen that you would have to add infrastructure down in that central hallway, and obviously in a new addition. And I also have the same feelings that Brian has, that giving up space to an organization and then having to put an addition on is not going to be easily swallowed by the public. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Michael Ray?
Yes. One of the last big contracts I did was a commercial kitchen renovation in Harvard Square. And it was a residential, you know, the concept was for it to be a community kitchen for, you know, community uses. And I think that but also have a residential feel. It proved to be extremely challenging. And, you know, and every different town or city has different requirements. And in my case of Cambridge, they were really rigid, that you can have it look like a residential kitchen, but you better not use it like a residential kitchen, because it's just different coding requirements that go with what's needed. However, I think that the current location of the kitchen would be ideal. But as in the last couple of years in government, I've heard a huge need for people in the community to be able to rent out commercial space for commercial kitchens. So it seemed I would be very much so in favor of a commercial kitchen in this space. I think that the agricultural community would benefit from that. People starting off businesses would benefit from that. But I think that if the cost starts getting too high, because kitchens are very expensive, you know, those hoods are very pricey. Everything in a kitchen is expensive. I would just be cautious that we don't do it in a way that makes that again a high cost. You know, my own experience was a renovation. The kitchen got I think about 15% bigger, and it was about $820,000. I don't think that the average voter in town is going to be in favor of any commercial kitchen that's not going I don't think people are going to be in favor of $1 million commercial kitchen. I think it just has to be scaled for the need, but I would be very much so in favor of that. And I also want to echo what Mr. Passio said, is that, you know, I think there is concern about swapping, and I think the current design, that we should be mindful that as you plan this, for there to be kind of that public entrance and people who don't know where to go. If you were to go to the building now, there seems to be a very prominent primary entrance. And so, you know, that if there's going to be a secondary entrance for kids, I think that one thing that's going to be important is how that looks like, what that looks like on the outside, kind of differentiate, so that way people know that that's a primary entrance, but not the town entrance.
Thanks, Michael Ray. Go ahead, Dave Passios. You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, that was me. Piggybacking on Michael Ray Jeffrey's comments just recently here, I think it should be clear, and I'm making an assumption here, but the commercial kitchen, or whatever kind of kitchen you want to call it, that PAC is looking for, it is not a kitchen that's going to be available for general use to the public, farm community, agricultural community, whatever. They're looking at it for programming. So I just want to be careful that we identify that, you know, we're kind of talking about two different animals here somewhat, and that a production area kitchen is not going to be available to the general public. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Tom and Ed, did you have anything else that you wanted to run by us this evening?
I think it's, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I had no further questions. Thank you.
Mine is just to clarify that we hear really clearly about the location, the need for conference rooms, meeting rooms, right number and location for the toilets, and also wayfinding access, and the whole thing about the commercial kitchen. And one question, and when we do the next level of development, it would be more clear, and we'll also have a chart and say, these are the areas from the space program, and that's how we come up with the total area for the department, and what the multiplier, that's why we're showing it at X square feet. And just one last question is, should we still explore putting the superintendent area on the left-hand side and try to swap the town offices, or?
Well, I'll take a crack at that. You want to take a crack at that, Brian?
Just something small that I noticed, that I think that bathrooms could be an issue if we did that too, where if you have, say, a student population needing bathrooms and trying to separate it from the public, that could be a potential issue with the flipping, but I'll let you continue.
I mean, so I was just going to say that what Dave said is a real big ticket item, security in this building, and traffic patterns, so to speak. I see that as a big issue. And so, but having said that, if you, in your brainstorming sessions with your design team, you find a way to, you find reasons that flipping might make sense, and you find ways to mitigate or manage those type of issues. I mean, I think you'd find that the board is all ears to those type. I mean, we really want an efficient building here. So if I'm just speaking for me, you know, if flipping those makes certain spaces more efficient and fit in better with the space needs, I mean, I'm interested in hearing it. But I have the same cautionary tone as Dave Passios that there's definitely a perception that, I think anyways, that crossing those might be problematic from a, you know, it might have the perception of a safety issue, introducing safety issues, concerns with students moving after school and things. So anybody else on that?
You already have my comments on that, so, you know, I do agree with that. One other thing that I think I'd like us to convey to Ed and Tom this evening, if it's agreeable with the board committee, is our lack of desire for building new additional space other than maybe small areas for bathrooms to accommodate outdoor activities, as was mentioned before. But I think it's a formula for disaster if we start talking about adding on to this space. I mean, there were proposals, as you said, to take off the entire back wing in the earlier days. And now you turn it around and add uses and need new construction. That's not going to be a proposal that's going to be well accepted.
I think I echo that. I don't want to handcuff the architects, but I think that I sort of agree with that feedback. I mean, I think it goes back a little bit to the charge of the committee. I mean, we're looking at building reuse here, folks. I think that if, I think there would have to be overwhelming, compelling reasons here, and even then, I think we'd have I agree with what Dave and Brian said on that issue. So I'll just let that stand. I don't know if the other members want to comment or not, but.
So, Mr. Chair, since I brought it up, I'll make my comment was basically same thing. If there was a reason, it was just a open thought of when looking at the total space. That's it. If it's, you know, if it doesn't seem to work, but I definitely agree that an addition, any kind of an addition is not going to fly too well with this town right now. But as far as flipping the building, it was more of if it made sense, if it did something, if it helped in any way. It was just a thought as we looked at the complete traffic pattern of everything.
Point noted. I think at this point, maybe just commenting on Dave Passio's point about a building addition. So I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to? Go ahead, Tom.
So one of the reasons we did this really schematic high-level test fit is to see we have so many areas or square feet required. So if we don't do the addition, something has to give. So it sounds like either we don't do the Boys and Girls Club, then everything physically will fit into the existing building. The other option would be, if we want a Boys and Girls Club, is if we keep we had about 4,000 square feet of, or the town hall meetings area. That hall is about 2,000, a little bit more than 2,000 square feet. There's also about 2,000 square feet of miscellaneous storage. So if those two functions don't go into the TCP, we may be able to put the Boys and Girls Club into this building. So that's something to consider. But it's we agree that it's much easier to renovate than it's very difficult to do an addition knowing the climate right now. But I just wonder if there's something to look further into, or it is the committee is pretty certain that because of the limited square footage that we are not going to include the Boys and Girls Club into this project at this point.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd have to disagree. I'd have to disagree with him because, you know, if you look at your square footage, you have more than enough square footage in some of these departments. So in other words, you have in that plan 4,000 square feet for PAC. They're asking for 2,300. If I get rid of the commercial kitchen, I'm down to like 2,000 square feet, and you have them at 4,000. You have the building group at 9,000 square feet for the, I'm sorry, for the school. You have 9,000 square feet for them. Meanwhile, in your assessment, they asked for 7,400. So you have extra room. The other one was we talked to, when you were frozen, I talked about the stage and that what would have been the teacher's lounge. That could also be used as a conference room. There's still spaces here that I think could be well used if we just look at it. I think, this was a great starting point, but I do think there's ways of utilizing the spaces a little differently. So the numbers don't, that you have extra space in there, and I'm happy for that, but there's also extra areas too that you haven't identified for anything. Does that make any sense, Tom? Oh, don't tell me I lost him again.
It's frozen again.
No, man, it must be me. Every time I speak, the man freezes. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut, guys, so we can get through this.
It could be. That does happen from time to time. You have people that say, anyways. Well, I think that what they presented here was my understanding anyway, is a preliminary look at adjacencies. And it was sort of correct me if I'm wrong here, Ed, but it was sort of a high level, throwing the space needs at the existing floor plan and seeing a couple of potential. And
Right, our architects after the user meetings tried to roll all the feedback from the user meetings into the existing building. I'm getting text from Tom that he's lost his Wi-Fi again. He lives in a poor area for Wi-Fi and cell phone use, so
Okay.
so I think he's gone.
So anyway, I guess what I wanted to ask is it sounded to me anyway like the feedback we provided you tonight is something you'll be taking, and as you move from this level of analysis into the next step where you get more specific with actual spaces that you can start to identify if there's areas where we can introduce some efficiencies and things.
Exactly. This was to get the discussion going. This certainly wasn't a final drawing by any means. It was to get all the thoughts from the committee and the input, and to take it back to the team and continue with the work. So that at the next meeting, you'll see a more refined design that our architects will be putting together. I did want to ask, we have on the calendar an August 31st meeting. Does it make sense still having that for the next one?
Well, I want to talk about the meeting schedule later anyway, but I guess it's up to you whether you think that meeting would be helpful. Is that too soon or what?
I'm going to text Tom and
Greg, the other thing is that if the architects don't think they'll have anything substantial, we could use that as a meeting for ourselves.
Yeah,
That's
fine.
why we set up a 2-meeting-a-month schedule,
Yeah.
so that we would have time to mull things as a committee without the additional pressure of time and time of presentations.
Yeah. So I would say, go ahead.
I was just going to make one more comment about the floor plan, and then I'll leave it alone, because we need to let them do what they do best, and that's shuffle the cards around. One other comment that I left out in my previous comments about the commercial kitchen and so on is that if it turns out to be in our purview to decide that the kitchen for PAC is a go down the road, wouldn't it make sense to put PAC in that shared conference space and consolidate all of their operations into that corner of the building? I just throw that out as a comment, as a possibility to be looked at. I'm sure there's other issues that need to be considered, but I just wanted to get that out there. Thank you.
Okay. So where are we at here?
To the previous discussion as well, Mr. Chair.
Say that again. Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to contribute to the previous discussion as well.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, sir. Go ahead.
All right. Would you mind putting up that map again of the?
Yep. I'm sorry about that.
All right. Thanks. I agree that an addition would scuttle the plans. I think that that there would be a hard time finding support for a building addition. I also, in response to David, Mr. Blatt, he brings up a really good point about the Boys and Girls Club, and I'd really like to see how we can make this work with the Boys and Girls Club, if at all possible. However, I do recognize that the addition of the Boys and Girls Club would may create a more difficult dynamic for the entirety of this plan, where now the town has to look at what to do with more empty buildings. That will play a role, but I think that certainly the Boys and Girls Club has hearing that they need more space. If it can be accommodated in this, I'd like to see that. If not, then perhaps that's a future use for one of the other buildings that will be vacated. My other comment here, aside from PAC and my support for the Boys and Girls Club, is the future proofing. That we don't want to be in the same position if we're going to spend this kind of money for at least a good 50 years. And so, making sure that there's additional office space to accommodate a growing community. We've brought on some additional staff positions in the last 15 years, and I have to imagine that we're going to bring on new staff positions in the next 15 years. And they're going to need offices. And just as the needs in the last 20 years has created this dynamic that we're trying to now resolve, I want to be careful that we're not only looking at current use and not planning for what if there's a building manager on staff? What if we have an engineer on staff? What if there's more positions that we're accommodating for? So I just want to urge that we future-proof, especially the town office side. And if that means just adding an addition onto their side, then that may be the plan. But just to kind of get an understanding of what if we have a 15% growth or a 10% growth in personnel? Yep. How do we accommodate it?
That's a very good point. And to segue off that, and like, for example, in the school project, we identified that we worked in like a 10% growth, and we planned in the design accommodated a future addition, so that it could be done in a way that wasn't a wholesale rework of the building. It was sort of, we have places where we can add 4 more classrooms on each wing.
Internet connection is not currently available.
That's something that I think has what Michael Ray just said is important. I think I agree with that wholeheartedly. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Thanks. I would also agree. Also, what Michael said about the article too, about it really is about consolidating the town office and the school use and community use. And I feel like isolating the Boys and Girls Club into the building is kind of early and premature in this process, because there's a lot of community groups out there like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and the Grange and Lions Club that we still haven't really heard from too, that could potentially need that space. So I really would rather stick to that multi-use and reach out to these groups when we talk about that too, to see what kind of usage they need and kind of design the rooms like that so they can reserve the spaces and use those spaces. And then that also leaves room for expansion later, where we can take some of those conference rooms or meeting rooms and convert them into office space as needed.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Did Tom or Ed, anything else?
No, I don't think Tom rejoined us.
He's there.
Okay, he's back.
I'm back.
Tom, I don't know if you heard the question. We were originally asking, we tentatively have a meeting on August 31st, but will you have all your drawings updated based on tonight's meeting, or should we have a meeting at a later date?
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say we should continue with our meeting for the 31st, have an update from Tom and Ed, but if they don't have an update, we can pass over that item.
I think I agree. Go ahead, Tom.
I agree. We'll try our best to have.
So we'll take this a little bit out of order now that we're talking about this. Let me just, so future meeting, I want to suggest that we meet, I think we talked about this, but I think planning board is 2nd and 4th, Tanner, is that correct? Monday?
Yeah, we're the 2nd and 4th Monday.
So I'd like to suggest that we do the 1st and 3rd Monday. Does that work for everybody? And obviously, I think what we would do is we would move our first meeting in September to the 31st because that's Labor Day. Does that make sense for everybody?
I'm never available on the first Monday nights.
Never available on the first Monday. Okay. Man, oh man, we always have.
There's always one. Always one.
Well, we thought we were good because we had a conflict with someone was
Yeah, it
Wednesdays
was
are okay.
Board of Health.
Board of
Yeah, I
Health.
was on Board of Health, yeah.
We thought we had freed Monday nights. All right. Well,
I can do, certainly I'm available the 3rd Monday of every month if that's a good date for everyone else. I mean, I can certainly do that.
I just want to try to get on a set. I would really want to get on a set schedule so that folks know that we're not dancing around if we can.
Greg, does the 31st still work for us? Let's just get that.
I think
going.
the 31st. I think 31st. I think that's the 5th Monday. So I'd like to propose that we do the next 2 meetings. I'd like to propose to be the 31st of August and the the 21st of September.
That'd be fine.
Okay. There'd just be, we'd have a 3-week gap in the middle, but it accommodates Labor Day.
Right.
And then we'll talk about October in either next meeting or the meeting after.
I'd like to, we may need a second meeting in September just to get the information going. So
Okay.
I don't know if we should tentatively schedule something on the 14th, but that's the second Monday, so that's not good.
Right. That doesn't work. Well, it's conflicts with the planning board.
What time?
Okay.
What time does the planning board start, Tanner?
Oh, 6:30 to whenever.
No, I understand. No,
You think these meetings are long? You should come to planning.
I feel your pain there, Tanner.
it,
What about, what do we got on, Tuesdays are out. What about on Wednesdays and Thursdays here?
Well,
I
then we
can do
First
that.
and 3rd is
Usually
the school committee.
yeah.
Which Wednesdays are the school committee?
And
1st and 3rd.
1st and 3rd. So the 9th is free? That's probably zoning board of appeals though, David. Is that true or no?
If somebody's asking for us, so we only meet when people ask.
Okay, so should we try that then? Should we try the 9th?
And I would have to just drop out at 7.
Okay, so given that it seems to be the best for the most folks, should we go for August 31st, September 9th?
Well, it'd be
And
September 10th.
Yeah, I'd prefer the 10th as well.
Okay,
My other obligations are I have meetings on the first 2 weeks of every month. I have meetings on Mondays and Wednesday nights, which I know makes me limited. So it's okay if I miss a meeting here and there, but that's my limitation. In
Okay.
addition to all the every Tuesday.
And
How
I
about
think,
that?
I mean, in terms of the 1st and 3rd, we have a lot of Monday holidays.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that may work itself out. And like in August, we've got the 5th Monday, so we can kind of slide things around. Like in September, it wouldn't be an issue because we're going to meet the 31st and then we would kick to
yeah, I was
3rd,
just,
right?
Tom suggested that he might need another meeting in between the 31st and the 21st.
Are you saying Thursday the 10th now?
Well,
It
that's
works
just,
for me.
Works for me.
Works for me.
it works for me as of now. The only thing that can happen to me at any point, and I'll have to rely on a vice chair here, is that I could have a public meeting for work, but so far I'm free on those nights, so.
Same
All
here.
right, so we want to try the 10th. We'll try the 10th, and so we'll go the September 10th and September 21st. Okay. All right. We took that agenda item out of order, but that's fine. Okay. So, sorry, my computer is, I have a general, as I committed to, we do a general community outreach discussion here. I think a meeting or two, we talked about being a little premature with formal conversations or formal announcement to, through the newspaper. But if anybody has anything to add here, I would entertain it.
I have a question. Mr. Who was it? Mr. Lintonen. I'm not going to say your last name wrong, Brian.
Leighton?
That's why I always say Brian. I can't.
Yeah, just say Brian, right?
So you brought up, I think you mentioned something about the other community organizations as well as Mr. Allison. And I don't know the history here. Has the committee reached out to nonprofits, other community organizations yet? No.
At this point, we've received, Boys and Girls Club are a good example. They reached out. We have not reached out at this point. So I think maybe this is a good opportunity. I know there's been discussion. I watched the FinCom meeting too. So maybe this is a good point. I'd suggest to do business, but we can discuss this right now.
I think it would be a good opportunity to help bring in, as we consider program space, to really have a better understanding of what the needs are for the community spaces. And so, I think that community outreach would certainly be helpful to get a better picture of what the community needs are, and if there's some opportunity here to be able to accommodate that.
Okay. So I'll take any discussion relative to that or any suggestions of how we might proceed on that. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, this is Brian Leighton. Yeah, I would just piggyback on that. I think we need to hear from them, the community members, so that they buy into it too, so they know their voice is being heard and that the architects are listening. I think we have to really reach out to them because they're not hearing about these meetings. Not a lot of people know that we're meeting or that we're doing this whole process. So I think it's important for us to reach out to as many of organizations that we can think of, make a list, and we reach out to their chairs or whoever's in charge of these committees and see if they can come or if they can at least meet with the architect.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Passios.
I think it's really clear since last Thursday night that I disagree with that. This was partially predicated by our discussions about the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club have been in the conversation since before even the article was written for town meeting. I remember meetings 2, 3, 4 years ago about TCP and in the background comments about the Boys and Girls Club would probably be interested and or was definitely interested in space in TCP. I don't disagree with creating flexible space that could be used by other organizations, but I don't think there's anything to be gained to be advertising out there for another half dozen organizations and asking what they want. I think we create spaces that are generally useful for a variety of organizations, and we move forward with that. Any attempt to skew what the goals are with this building and the design of this building and to drag it out even further than it has been already, I think is counterproductive. My personal thoughts.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I'll bite here. Did someone else?
I'll go for
Go
a
ahead.
little something.
Go ahead,
So
Mr. Blatt.
in the architects review, they did mention they did talk to the senior center and the council on aging. I don't remember if there was any of the other groups, but we have reached out. They have reached out to some of the groups. I do agree there's a lot of other groups in the area. Then again, they know this, pretty much we've advertised that this group meets and that this group is going on. I'm not sure what else we should do if they're not if they're not talking to us, or should we be really soliciting soliciting for too many hens in the pot.
Yeah, I got to admit, go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry. I'm cutting you off.
I'm sorry. I had my saying wrong. It's too many cooks in the kitchen type of thing. So anyway.
I got to be honest. I see both viewpoints. I guess listening to Dave Passio speak, I think this is a very difficult issue. It's one of the reasons why our conversation went the way it went last meeting, and
Yeah.
Mr. Jeffries was so kind to bring this back to the Board of Selectmen. The community uses portion of our charge is broad, and it has the potential to be a complicated discussion, which I don't say that to shy away from it. I say it to make sure that we're not, like I said last time, putting ourselves in a position where we're not supposed to be. But having said that, even if you take the most broad view of what, quote, community uses is supposed to be and look like, to be generalized space, and again, I'm not saying this is necessarily where we're going to land. I'm just saying it seems to me that it at least means having space in the building that's flexible enough for multiple users to be able to use, multiple town groups to be able to use, whether that's a gymnasium space or general office space or whatever we come up with. But even if you have that definition, you might still want to have input from those folks, because you'd want to know what types of things and amenities or capabilities that we need to have in the generalized space. So I'm not trying to muddy the water here. I'm presenting a thought process that says that I still think, and we've said this all along, I mean, we want folks to be, I get Dave Blatt's opinion there. We have advertised, and we're trying to be, we certainly have, we're not going to push back on anybody that wants to come and talk to us. We really want that. But if, I've said it on numerous occasions, I want to be available as a committee to sit at the table, at the discussion table of this discussion at large. And so if there's a way that we can initiate that, I guess I'm not opposed to it. I also I don't want it to become, I don't know, I could easily see that us writing down a list seems to me to bring in the potential that we're gonna leave somebody out inadvertently. I don't want to do that. So I'm just raising all this as sort of general fodder for discussion. I want to be participant. I'm happy to initiate. We're happy to initiate as far as I'm concerned, but I don't want to miss. I don't want to feel like the whole point of me saying this is I want to make sure we're not playing favorites. I want to make sure we get all those viewpoints. So whatever process we do, I want to make sure it hedges against that potential. Am I making any sense, or am I rambling? I feel like I'm rambling, but
I think you're making sense.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you're definitely making sense, and I agree. I mean, however, if you look at things like in some of my other committees, we've tried to meet, like say at the library, and all of the rooms are taken, and I'm sitting there in the teen room having a town meeting, having a committee meeting, and things like that. So there are places available in this town to meet. It's just a matter of you have to reserve it, and you have to be proactive with that. So I do agree that it'd be nice to get input. However, but what do we have? The trick would be, is there a cutoff? How do we get the word out and how do we create a cutoff for that input? And I would say that it has to be quick.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Mr. Blatt, on that last part. You know, as the newest member of this committee, and we spent the beginning of our time here tonight talking about the absence of minutes. You know, I think it's the general public, if they're not able to watch the history, that there's not really a record there for them to go to the website and pull off of and get a summarization of what's been going on. So I do think that there's a need to reach out and let people know, to remind them, you know, that this group is still meeting, and that there is, you know, and we know, and as I think it was, I'm gonna say your last name wrong, Brian, but as I think Brian mentioned, that we know certain groups, and I think the time limit is short. So perhaps it's, you know, that within the next week or so, you know, we can ask Mr. Allison to reach out to, you know, the Grange Club, the Agricultural Committee, you know, agricultural community, to kind of figure out what the needs are, that we can look, you know, Mr. Blatt, his ties to the Boys and Girls Club, to kind of get a more formalized picture of what their needs are. I agree with what you said as well, Mr. Roy, about capabilities of spaces, that you can have a multi-use room, but every organization may have different needs in that multi-use room. And so, you know, being able to accommodate for all those different groups would be helpful. And I went to a Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts meeting that was in the center of town, and maybe, I don't know if they need more program space, or the boys, you know, but I think that we probably could, in an organized way, reach out to these groups in the next week or so, and just make them aware, and perhaps invite them to the meeting coming up on the 31st or the 10th, and
Yep.
and just ask them to kind of just relay what any of their needs would be in this process. And that way we don't have this linger till November.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Jeffries. I think reaching out to the library, see who rents them, their space, reaching out even to the school too, because I know like the baseball organization, they use the space in the school too, where they could potentially use the space to meet in TCP. I think back to why the Boys and Girls Club knew about this whole redesign was Mr. Blatt was actually talking to them and telling them to reach out to the selectmen. So I think it is us that we're going to have to reach out to the community, because they don't know about what's going on.
Okay,
Final comment, Greg?
go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, as I said earlier, the Boys and Girls Club have been in this conversation for years. It's not a last minute thing. The lack of a formal request to us is the only thing that's new recent. There was always discussion. You may not have been part of it, Brian, but I remember the Board of Selectmen's meeting and some very heated reuse meetings that included discussion about the Boys and Girls Club. The other comment, one of the previous speakers mentioned that we've already reached out to the Council on Aging and a couple of other entities. Those are entities that are already using the building. That's why they were approached, not because they weren't using the building. Do you need space in the building? So that's why they were on the list of people to be interviewed. It's fine if you want to go through the motions of, you know, soliciting more information. We're already seeing that we're running out of space. So it isn't like we're going to be able to commit space to any given organization unless we bump out another organization. So we just need to keep that in mind.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Thanks. Just to go off what Dave was talking about, I feel like the community use rooms are more of like short-term rentals where people can meet, where if we have those community use rooms that different organizations can use them. I'm not really promoting people reserving rooms long-term, more of short-term usage.
The only rebuttal to that is that, you know, we have these meeting rooms, as you mentioned, in the library, in the middle high school, and who knows what's going to happen with the buildings that are being, spaces that are being vacated. It's not in our purview to take meetings away from those spaces and move them into this building. That's not our charge. Providing space for meetings that are already happening somewhere else, that's not part of our charge. Thank
I
you.
agree with that. I think that, but what I want to be, and I was thinking this earlier, and I didn't mention it. I don't think. If I'm duplicating myself, I apologize. But I think what we do want to capture, though, is folks like Mr. Allison, what Mr. Allison brought up as an example, folks that currently don't have a spot in town that could really use one. And I watched the FinCom meeting, and there was some suggestions that that's the case. And I guess if those exist, and we can build in, like the Agriculture Commission or the market might have to my point before, might have particular needs that, maybe they're a lot of work to incorporate, but maybe they're not. And maybe it just would be a shame if it was just a small oversight. That's something that we could have easily added into a project in general community space to accommodate that as another user that could, that could really benefit from it. So, certainly we have a request from Mr. Allison to reach out to the Grange Agricultural Commission. I think that certainly now we have a formal request. We had someone attend a meeting. He's here the whole meeting. So, we certainly need to advance that discussion. But I'm in terms of a general town-wide request, we have to decide this. So and how we would do it. And I know I agree it has to be quick, although I want to be careful there too. Like we've been saying all along, I want to make sure we give public outreach its due. And I guess I've always thought about this more in terms of once we have a plan to show people and vet, but it factors in now. I want to make sure I don't want a perception that we're rolling too quickly here. I don't want to drag our feet either, but I want to make sure that we give this its due. Personally, that's just me.
Mr. Chair, I agree. Perhaps maybe we can encourage Mr. Jeffries to have the Board of Selectmen announce it. We do have a meeting on the 31st. We can draft up something that can be put into the ledger and, basically have it where the September 10th is our deadline for all this, and then go from there.
That's fine.
I think, you're basically giving folks a month to approach us with this selectman mentioning it over a couple of meetings and an announcement in the ledger. So what else can we ask for at some point? We got it.
Okay. With Mr. Jeffries, would it help if I came to the meeting and made a statement or public comment to this effect? Or I bet you are open to your thought on that.
Certainly I think that would be helpful. If you're at the beginning of the meeting, I'll make sure that I mention it at the end of the meeting for the folks who join late and hold on. That way you don't have to sit through what could be a very long meeting.
Yeah. Appreciate that. I'm happy to do that. I'll do that tomorrow. Are you on tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, I should be able to do that tomorrow. I have another meeting, but it's
If
probably
you can't, I certainly can make the comment as well.
No, I think I can do it. I think it's my meeting will be at 7:45 or later, so I should be okay.
Okay.
And then I'm happy to draft something to put in the ledger, but I'm certainly not going to do it unilaterally. So if we wanted to do that, I'm happy to draft it, but I would want that to be reviewed by the members of the committee before that went in.
Agree, and that could be for the 30. That could be an agenda item for the 31st.
Yeah.
That puts it in the ledger twice before. Well, no, once before the.
Once before the 10th, but you'd have to probably give more time at that point.
Okay, so
We'd probably have to push it out to the 21st because you decide on putting something in the ledger on the 31st. It's not going to go in right away, and then you're only going to give people a few days.
Well, it should go in for that Friday edition of the ledger. It's not like they have that much you know.
Yeah, but then we're well, I guess it's a week. All right, well, I will
talk
draft
about it.
something. I will draft something to put before the commission, put before the committee for the 31st, and we can decide. Go ahead, Brian.
What about possibly sharing it with some of the town Facebook groups? That
Yeah.
message, whatever we come up with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to make sure we, it's vetted by the whole, this isn't coming from Greg Roy, this is coming from the committee, so I'm happy to draft it, but I'm not going to put it out there unilaterally. I want to make sure everybody has the voice on it. That I'm seeing head nods. That sound good? I'll put something,
Yeah.
I'll draft something, and we'll pick this up on the 31st. I think that's the best we can do in terms of putting something formal out there. I just want to make sure we're all coordinated. And I mean, to Dave Passios's point, I mean, and what I said earlier, it's a complicated discussion here. So that's why I think we need to all review it, and it needs to be a group effort. So, okay. All right. Anything else on community outreach? Okay. Do we have any new business?
I think we already discussed that.
I think we did too. Well, that could be other new business, but all right. Hearing none. Future
Right,
meeting schedule.
One thing
ahead,
for the
Dan.
31st, if we're going to go into this process, do you think we should communicate to Ed and Tom that we're going to be tied up with other items that evening, or?
Seems like maybe that makes sense. That you're saying we don't need them to attend on the.
Yeah, unless they've got something they really feel should get before us in a timely timely fashion. The only other thing being that, as I said before, the more complicated we make this process, the longer it's stretched out. And, we have a charge, we have a product that we need to come up with and a proposal to come up with. And this direction that the committee is choosing to take is going to add time and effort, but I don't want it to hold up the process of bringing the final product to town meeting or to the citizens. I think they're ancillary uses, and I don't disagree that you want to make sure that your common use spaces are as agile as possible. But I don't want them, number one, adding huge costs to the project, and number two, a lot of time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you. Tom and Ed, I'll just reach out to you before I do the agenda, and I'll see how you're looking. If you want some time, I'll give it to you. If not, I'll leave you off. That sound good? Tom's frozen again.
It sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, all right. That's fine. Okay. Is there any public comment from the public? Mr. Allison.
Hello there again. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Wow, dark. It's gotten dark. I really appreciate all the accommodations that you put into my first public comment, and we certainly have avenues to move forward. Everybody working together, but I do have some comments that are completely personal, have nothing to do with planning or AgCom. So, as a resident of 188 Flat Hill, the schools didn't want this building, so they built a new primary. They built the new primary. They changed the Turkey Hill to elementary, and they built a new middle high school. $72 million for the new middle high school. I don't know how much the new primary costs. And I know, as being a member of capital planning for a long time, that Turkey Hill costs continually a large amount of money. I don't see any reason that this should not become a municipal building space on municipal property, which brings back into question the property line. And I don't see why the schools need space in this 45,000 square foot building when they've got two brand new buildings, one aged building being Turkey Hill, and probably 50 plus acres that they're going to keep on this previous school campus. This needs to be a municipal thing. We don't have any center for anything. So the schools cover 5 to 20 basically, and then the senior center you're eligible at 50. So people between 20 and 50, we pay taxes for what? We don't get a lot for that. I mean, the schools right off the top take 2/3, and then they keep nickel and diming the town budget for extra stuff for the schools. And that's great. I don't have a problem educating our children, but we're not just providing education. We're providing daycare, we're providing meals, we're providing all kinds of other things for the schools, which in my mind is not right for the 11,000 people plus that live in town. And then I want to also mention the the reuse of the commercial kitchen for only the pack. That sounds ridiculous to me. It's a commercial kitchen. There's no two ways about it. It's a commercial kitchen. There's two commercial kitchens in the senior center, and I would be willing to bet you that every single school has a commercial kitchen. So there's 3 schools, so that's 3 commercial kitchens. There's a senior center with 2 commercial kitchens. Now we've got this municipal building with a commercial kitchen, and there's talk about allowing it only for pack. That doesn't make any sense to me. I appreciate the my public, private, personal input is over, and I really appreciate the concern and the care and the consideration that you've given to other local groups. We need to have a place for people between 20 and 50 to get together and do things. It makes total sense to me to have one wing be municipal offices, another wing be totally community space, available to any community group, whether it be by appointment for a charge or just available. And then also, there's been no talk whatsoever about the $1 million plus bond bill that was gained, I think 2 years ago by now, that still is open, I think, for 3 years. It was a total of 5 years. So we got $1 million, not less than $1 million by Governor Baker in a bond bill, which apparently is not very easy to get, but not less than $1 million for 3 uses: a community kitchen, revamping the L&M gas station, which as far as I know is still not town property, and then streetscapes and building facades. So, I mean, Mr. Jeffries mentioned 800,000 plus for a commercial kitchen. We're Lunenburg. We're an agricultural community. We don't need bells and whistles. We don't need chrome, and we don't need brass, and we don't need fancy facades. I mean, we need building space. We need space that the public can go into and not get bothered by asbestos or, you know, if you're in a wheelchair, it'd be nice to be able to get through the door and into the building. I don't disagree with these necessities, but these extravagance is ridiculous. I mean, the middle high school to cost $72 million was insane in my mind. Granted, the town only paid half of it or something close to it, but we need to stop allowing outside. We need to realize what we are, what we have, who we are, what we do, and who is involved. I mean, it's 11,000 plus people, and we need to provide for them, not just the parents, not just the kids, not just the seniors, we need to provide for the town. And when you take 2/3 off the top of the town budget, goes to schools, and then we fire and police get well funded, which, well, they should, they need to be. DPW gets a fraction of what it should get in funding. And then after schools, fire, police, DPW, what does that leave for the rest of the townspeople? 10, 15%? I admire everyone on this board, on this group, for your concern and consideration, and you have a strong charge. You have a lot to do. Greg, I really appreciate the way you've run these meetings and the consideration that you've given. It's not an easy job, I know. And all the members, I appreciate. And I don't ever want to think that I don't. But there are just so many things. I went on the walkthrough, the TCP. It was December 2nd of 2017. We walked through that building. There was probably 30 people. We walked through all 5 buildings. We walked through the town hall, the old primary, the Brooks House, the TCP, and I'm not sure what the 5th building was, but I actually did go to elementary school there. I think I was there for 4 or 5 years anyways. That's an awesome building. Every room has access to the inside and the outside. So there's 2 entrances, 2 egresses to each room. It's amazing. That's an awesome building. And to pick it apart and say, this is crap, this is crap, this is crap, it's kind of silly. I mean, you consider, you guys are talking about upwards of $10 million for the rehab of TCP. I'm not sure if you've got a max in mind, but it's 45,000 square feet with a roof and access to the inside and the outside for practically every room. This is an amazing building. It takes some money to make it up to date because it is old, no doubt. But I just hope that everybody can keep in mind the public need, the necessity to provide for community, and just to get specific, the Grange meets twice a month. And so we really only need a space for a few hours, 2 times in the evenings. There are so many mosquitoes. There are so many groups that can be exclusive of each other and use the same space. The big deal is storage. You know, we probably could get by with a 5x5 closet for Grange. I know we currently use the library, the new library, and then also something else to consider is that once municipal buildings are relocated to TCP, we're going to have the old town hall and the Ritter building. So maybe some of these other uses, maybe some of these other groups, maybe a community center at one of those isolated buildings would be a better idea. But I think that a community center in this 45,000 square foot building with municipal offices, with all kinds of other public community spaces would be ideal. And you know what, I've spoken this for many, many years at many different venues. So people are as involved as they want to be. And most of the meetings, all the meetings right now currently are online available. So there is no limit to the amount of information that public can access. And again, I just want to thank this group for your work, and hats off to you. Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Any other public comments from the public? Okay, any public comments from the committee? Not everybody speak at once. All right. Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I will take a roll call vote. Brian,
Yes.
David Blatt,
Yes.
Michael Ray Jeffries,
Aye.
David Cassius,
Aye.
Tanner Cole,
Aye.
and I from me. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Have a
Thanks,
good-
Greg. Great job.
Okay.